Bava Kama, Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Kama, page 39b at the top of the page, continuing from the idea of the orphans collecting of superior quality property of the steward. If you say that it should be collected from the superior quality property of the steward, people will refrain from becoming stewards, fearing that they would incur a financial loss by having to pay for damage caused by the orphan's animals. By contrast, Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says that it is collected from the superior quality property of the steward, and there is no concern that people will refrain from becoming stewards, because if they pay for the orphans, they are subsequently repaid by the orphans when they grow up. The Gemara notes, and the matter of whether or not the court appoints stewards for the halachically incompetent owners of an innocuous ox for the purpose of collecting damages from the sale of its body, if it gores, is subject to a dispute between Tanaim. As it is taught in a Braita with regard to an ox whose owner became a deaf mute, or whose owner became an imbecile, or whose owner went overseas, if the ox gores, Yehuda ben Nakosa said that Sumchas said it retains its status of innocuousness until the court renders it forewarned in the presence of the owner. And the rabbis say the court appoints stewards for them, and the ox is rendered forewarned in the presence of the stewards. If the deaf mute regained his hearing, or the imbecile became halachically competent, or the minor reached majority, or its owner came back from overseas, Yehuda ben Nakosa said that Sumchas said the ox had reverted to its previous status of innocuousness until it is rendered forewarned in the presence of the owner. Rabbi Yossi said the ox retains its status of being forewarned. The sages said, what did Sumchas mean by saying that it retains its status of innocuousness? If we say that he meant that it is not rendered forewarned at all, and it is still considered innocuous, from the fact that Sumchas himself teaches in the latter clause of the Braita that the ox has reverted to its previous status of innocuousness, it is clear by inference that previously it was rendered forewarned. Rather, what did Sumchas mean by saying that it retains its status of innocuousness? He meant that it retains its completeness, as we do not reduce its owner's share of it by collecting compensation from the sale of its body. Rather, the injured party must wait until the owner becomes competent or returns. Apparently, the court does not appoint a steward for the owner of an innocuous ox to enable the injured party to collect damages from its body. And the rabbis who disagree with Sumchas say that the court appoints a steward for the owner and renders the ox forewarned in the presence of the steward. Apparently, they hold that the court does appoint a steward for the owner of an innocuous ox to enable the injured party to collect damages from its body. The Gemara asks, and in the latter clause of the Braita, with regard to what principle do they disagree? The Gemara answers, the difference between them is with regard to whether a change of custody changes the status of the ox. Sumchas holds that a change of custody changes the status of the ox, whereas Rabbi Yossi holds that a change of custody does not change it. Rather, it is determined by the actions of the ox itself, regardless of its custody. The sages taught in a Braita, with regard to an ox that gored that belonged to a deaf mute, an imbecile, or a minor, Rabbi Yaakov pays half the cost of the damage. That's strange. Rabbi Yaakov pays, and the Gemara seems to ask the same question. What did Rabbi Yaakov do that he should pay for half the damage? Rather, amend the Braita to say, Rabbi Yaakov says that he pays half the cost of the damage. Okay. But what's very interesting, here's where my commentary comes in. I did not see this line at all. I didn't see it. Not consciously, maybe subconsciously. But I was thinking about it in the previous line about somebody named Yaakov. And how he connected a whole story with Yaakov, someone I know named Yaakov. And I was thinking about and a whole to do with him. And then I see Rabbi Yaakov pays Chatzi Nezek. It's like, are my thoughts in sync with the singularity of the Talmud? Okay. But you know something? The Yerushalmi actually talks this way. If you study the Yerushalmi, which I've been doing lately, the Yerushalmi text is like Rabbi Ba, and then they don't even say what he says. Rabbi Ba, his name, and then what he says. They're really abbreviated. So this is kind of like Yerushalmi format. So I was already in tune with the Yerushalmi format, so I didn't have a question. But the Gemara, maybe Bavli, they weren't used to that style. Anyway, okay. The Gemara asks, with what are we dealing? It is with regard to an innocuous ox. Isn't this obvious? Everyone else holds that one pays half the cost of the damage caused by their ox gored. So what is the novel element of Rabbi Yaakov's statement? And if it is with regard to a forewarned ox, it is unclear why the owner pays half the cost of damage, and if it is a case where he provided adequate safeguarding for it, he is not required to pay at all. And if it is a case where he did not provide adequate safeguarding for it, he is required to pay the entire cost of the damage. Amar Rava says, actually Rabbi Yaakov stated this ruling with regard to a forewarned ox, and here we are dealing with a case where he provided reduced safeguarding and did not provide superior quality for safeguarding it. And Rabbi Yaakov holds in accordance with the opinions of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that when an ox is rendered forewarned, the liability for its element of innocuousness remains in place. In other words, with regard to half of the damages, it is treated like an innocuous ox, and it is treated like a forewarned ox only with regard to the other half of the damages. Therefore, half the cost of the damage is still collected from the proceeds of the sale of its body, and furthermore, with regard to another issue, Rabbi Yaakov holds. Why am I thinking of Macy's right now? Just Macy's popped into my mind. Rabbi Yaakov holds, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that although superior safeguarding is necessary to innocuous ox, reduced safeguarding is sufficient for a forewarned ox. Consequently, one who safeguards his forewarned ox in this manner is exempt from paying the additional half that he would be liable to pay due to the ox's forewarned status. He is liable with respect to the half that he pays due to its remaining element of innocuousness. And Rabbi Yaakov also holds in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis who say that the court appoints a steward for the owner of an innocuous ox to enable the injured party to collect damages from its body. Therefore, Rabbi Yaakov rules that in the case of in the Braita, where a forewarned ox owned by a halakhically incompetent person is safeguarded in a reduced fashion, half the cost of the damage must be paid from the proceeds of the sale of its body. Abai said to Rava, but do Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yaakov not disagree with regard to this matter? But isn't it taught in a Braita that with regard to an ox of a deaf, mute, imbecile, minor, or that gored, Rabbi Yehuda deems the owner liable, and Rabbi Yaakov says that he pays only half the cost of the damage? Rabbi Bar Ula says there is no disagreement here. Rabbi Yaakov merely explained what Rabbi Yehuda deems him liable to pay. The Gemara asks, and according to Abaya, who says that Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Yehuda disagree with regard to what principle do they disagree, the Gemara answers, Abaya could have said to you that here we are dealing with a forewarned ox whose owner did not safeguard it at all, and that it is consequently liable for the full cost of the damage. And Rabbi Yaakov holds in accordance with the opinions of Rabbi Yehuda with regard to one issue and disagrees with him with regard to one issue. He holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda with regard to one issue, as Rabbi Yehuda holds that when an ox is rendered forewarned, its element of innocuousness remains in its place, and Rabbi Yaakov agrees. And he disagrees with him with regard to one issue, as Rabbi Yehuda holds that the court appoints a steward, and not betrophus, for the owner of an innocuous ox to enable the injured party to collect damages from its body, whereas Rabbi Yaakov holds that the court does not appoint a steward. Therefore, the owner is exempt from paying the half for which he would be liable due to the ox's element of innocuousness, and pays only the half damages he is liable to pay due to its forewarned status. Rabbi Acha bar Abaya said to Ravina, granted, according to Abaya, who says that they disagree. This is interesting. Rav Acha bar Abaya said to Ravina, there's two Abayas? If there's not two Abayas, why would Rav Acha be calling his father just Abaya? It's kind of weird, huh? Granted, according to Abaya, so Rav Acha bar Abaya says to Ravina, according to Abaya, he would have said my father, no? Granted, according to Abaya, who says that they disagree, the explanation works out well. But according to Rava, who says that they do not disagree, instead of interpreting the Braita as referring to a foreign ox, he should have interpreted it as referring to an innocuous ox.